Dan, in this episode of the Business Anchors podcast sponsored by Adobe Express, why are we talking about psychology when this is supposed to be a business podcast?
That's a good question, Lloyd. Did you know there's actually a really close relationship between psychology and marketing? That's why we're talking about it.
Okay.
And actually, the real reason is this has been inspired by Rory Sutherland, who last week's episode 111, we spoke about psychology a little bit and how you can increase the perceived value of what you do based on a podcast I watched, which was where Rory Sutherland was interviewed by Stephen Bartlett on the Diary of a CEO.
Yeah.
And since watching that, I've kind of gone down a rabbit hole of psychology and psychology studies in marketing. And I realized I was like looking at this stuff thinking it's really interesting and thought our listeners might find it interesting as well.
I guess, and when we spoke about Rory Sutherland before and that stuff, the listeners just absolutely loved it. So we're going to do more of it.
Exactly, yeah, they did. Well, we actually only just posted that episode today, so we don't know if they loved it yet. But
I mean, you don't need to tell them everything.
Okay, we're honest, Lloyd. We tell the truth.
Tell them everything.
So there's basically there's a number of insights we've learned from psychology studies that I want to go through and talk a bit about it, the study, the takeaway in terms of the marketing takeaway, and then want to give some examples of how at Knowlton we're implementing stuff we've learned from those studies, or what we're doing that reinforces the points we're making based on the insights from the studies. Does that make sense?
Wow. Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Bit intense for a Business Anchors podcast, but
sorry.
Yeah, that does make sense. I noticed the first point, you've given yourself a bit of a reading challenge. I'm looking forward to hearing you pronounce this.
Because I am going to be using some notes here because there's quite a lot to remember from the studies. I'm not going to do like death by reading loads of stuff, but there is some specific points I need to get across based on the insights from the studies. And some of the people's names who have done the studies are I still don't know how you say them. And also some of the words in the studies I don't know how you say.
Oh, that makes you sound highly intelligent.
No, but the insights, Lloyd, and I think the value people will get will be from the insights and how we're applying them. So
just trust us, even though Dan can't read the stuff that he's talking about, it's going to be really interesting and informative. Is that what we're saying?
Don't try and make me look stupid, Lloyd. We're going to be saying good stuff. It's just that some of the words I can't say.
All right. Okay.
So, should we dive in?
Okay.
So the first lesson is to do with reciprocity.
Bless you.
No, reciprocity. That's how you say it.
Bless you.
So stop. So please stop saying that every time.
Okay. Well, yeah.
Stop. To do with reciprocity, and it's all about us feeling obliged to give back to people who have given to us. Mm-hmm. And I think this is quite a well-known thing, like the power of reciprocation and doing things because you feel like someone's done something for you. But there's actual studies to back this up, and in terms of lessons we can learn when it comes to marketing, there's quite a few. So, do you want to know about this brief bit about this study?
I certainly do, yes.
So in 2002, a team of researchers found that waiters could increase the tips they earn by using reciprocity. So tips went up 3% when diners were given an after-dinner mint. You know, like when you're at a restaurant and you get a little mint, like, oh, that's nice. Yeah. And you feel like, oh, they've given me a mint. I'm going to give them a small tip.
Oh, is that why that happens?
This study says so. I guess so. Yeah. This is a very famous study.
I've always thought that's been a weird part of the meal. Just we've ordered all this stuff, and here's something you didn't order right at the end.
Yeah. There you go.
Even though we said we're finished.
Yeah.
Have some more to eat.
Even more interestingly, so tips went up 3% when they had the mint. Tips went up 20% if, while delivering the mint, the server paused, looked the customer in the eye, and then gave them a second mint while telling them the mint was specifically for them.
You're just paying them to go away at that point, aren't you?
This sounds crazily specific, but yeah, it kind of makes sense. Like,
I suppose this is basically having a personal interaction rather than I just drop these mints at every table. It's like, there you go.
And I think
this is for you.
Exactly. That's you wouldn't do good as a waiter. But there is, like, when you're hearing these studies, there is logical thought and reasoning behind this, and it kind of makes sense, doesn't it?
I've read about a study as well. I actually thinking about this. I recently listened to a 25-hour audiobook on psychology.
Get a life.
I didn't do it like just for 25 hours straight.
Well, his family didn't see
over a
him
period
for-
of like a month. But and one of the studies that in that audio book was, and I think this is quite an old school style of selling, but I remember this happening at our house when we were kids. There used to be more kind of, like Avon, where they come to your door and sell to you and stuff. That used to be more common because there wasn't the internet to order things. So they'd be like, oh, my mate Sharon, she does perfumes, that sort of thing. But they had a study where they would give a gift just for thank you for letting me to come into your house to for me to show you the stuff.
Yeah.
And I think it was a like a shaver worth like a $5.
Yeah.
But I don't know the exact things, but when they gave that at the start, like crazily more people bought from them than when they didn't. And you think, well, giving someone like a razor that they don't even want or need,
You feel
why
like you
would
owe
that?
them.
But I think, it is that thing of like, oh, they've done something for me, so now I want to reciprocate.
Exactly. And in terms of like the main takeaway here, in terms of from a marketing perspective, it's provide value for your customers up front before trying to sell to them. And this is literally that same message we've been banging the drum constantly saying to you all, is to provide value, create content that educates, entertains, inspires your customers before just creating content about your products and services. And literally our whole, in terms of how Knowlton apply this, our whole marketing strategy for us and all of our clients is to do this exact thing.
It's interesting for our own business at Knowlton. There's loads of things that we were really crap at in the early days, but actually that is something we did from day one. Like just, we'll provide value. And it was a bit of a hopeful thing at first, but it's like in the hope that at some point people will be like, you've been teaching me all this stuff for free. So, now I have an opportunity to work with you. Yeah. I'm going to do that. And it, like I said, it was a bit more hopeful. Now we're educated and,
actually know
and
that
we're like, there's reasons why this works and that kind of thing. But it has been a major thing.
Do you know why we did that from the start?
Because you were really clever?
No.
I know. What then?
Because Gary Vee said to do it.
Oh, okay.
So
Good.
I blindly followed whatever Gary Vee said initially, and then when we obviously started working together, told you to do it too.
Thank you, Gary.
And I guess slightly meta before we move on to the next one. This podcast is an example of how we do this. We are giving you our best insights and lessons that we've learned from growing our business and running marketing campaigns for some of the biggest brands in the world. We're not holding back. We're giving all of this away to you for free because we know there's a small percentage of you that eventually in the future will become a customer.
It's about time some of you guys reciprocated, isn't it? That's what Dan's trying to say.
Yeah. The power of reciprocation. Really interesting study.
Great.
You interested in hearing another one, Lloyd?
I would really like to hear another one.
This actually relates to your Avon example a little bit.
Okay.
And it's called the foot in the door method.
Oh, moving on to how to break into people's houses.
No. So the whole point of this is when asked to make a small commitment first, we're more likely to agree to a larger request later.
Right.
And so the study to back this up. The first study on the foot in the door method was performed in the 1960s. 1960s? That's mad. By Jonathan Friedman and Scott Fazer. Researchers phoned a number of homemakers to inquire about the household products they use. So they called up asking them, what products do you use?
You can tell you're reading this bit because you've never used the phrase homemakers.
No, yeah. 3 days later, the researchers called again, this time asking to send a group of workers to the house to manually note the cleaning products in the home. So at each level, they're kind of doing more of a commitment to getting in front of them. The women who responded to the first phone interview were 2 times more likely to respond to the second request. So if you lead with something small and get someone to buy in a small way, and the best example of this in marketing I see is like through subscribe to our email newsletter or subscribe to this podcast. We're asking you to do something small, easy, and free initially that you're then buying into in a small way that will then make you more likely to eventually buy into.
That for most purchase decisions, well, not for most, but for a lot of purchase decisions, if it's a new brand or a new business, like say there's a brand, I've been bodyboarding a bit recently.
Nice.
I'm a pretty cool guy. If there's like a new brand of bodyboard or whatever, it's more likely I might buy.
I thought you said bodybuilding. Sorry, bodyboarding.
No. if there's like bodyboard wax that costs like £4, I'd be more likely to buy that as a first purchase to be like, oh, is this brand good or whatever, than straight in for like the £150 bodyboard.
Yes.
Or a wetsuit. Yeah. And I guess that does make sense. Yeah.
That makes complete sense. Yeah. So really the marketing takeaway is to try and get buy-in in a small way from your customers through things like an email newsletter, potentially having lower value products like you mentioned, like the bodyboard wax.
Yeah.
So it's like a $5.
Easy buy-in to like test out. Yeah. Oh, is this? Now I trust you a bit more.
Yeah.
Now
test the products.
We see it with clients, like, you know, our clients, obviously it's not £4, it's like thousands buying into something. But we've seen this quite a lot. Sometimes the first time you work with a client, it could be like a £5,000, £10,000 project, and then we build that trust. They experience working with us, and then they come back and they spend 40,000, or you know, that's something we experience.
And it's once you've built that trust, it's a much easier sell as well. So, an example of this week, we had a meeting with a previous customer. It's a very different meeting someone who you've delivered results for and they trust you. You're discussing how the next bigger project can work rather than convincing them.
Yeah. So I suppose if you're trying to get a sale over the line, or you're trying to convince someone to work with you and you're struggling, a good method could be, is there a way that I can present them something lower value to get my foot in the door, show them the value they're going to get, and then with, you know, the likelihood that will increase the next time, and over time you'll get that value.
And something we've done, which is exactly what you're saying, is sometimes we've broken bigger projects up into smaller parts. So for example, this first smaller piece of the project where we come up with all of the creative ideas and flesh out these concepts to present to you, invest a small amount in that piece of work, and then when you're happy with that, then invest in the bigger piece of work. And it's exactly the same thing.
It's where it's really important to listen to your customers, whether you're selling products or whether you're selling services, and they're really expensive, or, you know, if someone's investing thousands and thousands. If your customers are reluctant to commit, you know that actually maybe there's an opportunity there where you need to provide them a lower cost, lower barrier to entry way of working with you or becoming a customer before they commit to that.
And this all comes through experience. Like, I've learned that over the years you build up your kind of intuition of situations and how things work, but you need those years of experience of going through the motions and figuring this stuff out to then think, I've had a similar situation like this where a customer wasn't quite bought in, but they invested in a smaller thing first, and then you can present that because you're learning from your previous experiences.
Yeah. The more I think about it, the more and more, even our suppliers, like our accountant, we worked with them in a small way first, and then they started doing our payroll, and then they started doing our bookkeeping. Like, I'm just thinking, once you have your foot in the door, it's much easier to get a sale.
If you're actually good, then it works.
Yeah, definitely.
You ready for study number 3?
I would love to hear about study number 3, Dan.
Have you heard of the framing effect, Lloyd?
I'm not sure I have, actually.
You know when you've got a picture?
Yeah.
And you put a frame around it?
Yeah.
It's that.
Ah.
No, what it actually is it's...
Oh, God, we do have a laugh on the Business Angle podcast, don't we?
God, that was terrible.
Oh, God. You see what he did there? It was framing, so he made it out like it was just putting a frame around a picture.
Anywho, so...
You catch Dan at the Edinburgh Fringe in 2023.
What this is where people react to a situation differently depending on whether they perceive the situation to be a loss or a gain. Okay, people will react differently if they perceive it as a loss or a gain. So let me give you the example of the research. So, crazy names again. Researchers Amos Tversky and Daniel Kahneman polled 2 different groups of participants on which of 2 different treatments they would choose for people infected with a deadly disease. Okay, so people have got a deadly disease. You need to choose which of these 2 solutions you want.
Cheerful.
Treatment A, 200 people will be saved.
Great.
Treatment B, a 1/3 probability of saving all 600 lives and a 2/3 probability of saving no one. Right? So both of those things are exactly the same situation.
Yeah.
You're saving 200 people out of 600. but they've been framed differently. So another example. Oh, no, let me just give you the rest of the study. Sorry.
Okay.
The majority of participants picked treatment A because of the clear, simple gain in saving lives.
Yeah.
Treatment A saved 200 people's lives. Treatment B, a 1/3 probability of saving 600 lives, and 2/3 people won't. In group 2, participants were told the following. Treatment A, 400 people will die. This is really positive, isn't it? Treatment B, a 1/3 probability that no one will die, and a 2/3 probability that 600 people will die. The majority of participants picked treatment B because of the clear negative effect of treatment A.
Right.
So
thousands of deaths on this episode of Business Anchors podcast.
What this is all about is the way you frame things. And this is really relevant to our previous podcast episode. If you haven't listened to it, please do. Because in it, we talk a lot about psychological reframing, how you can change the way people look at and think about your product and service by positioning in different ways. And we give examples of Eurostar, Uber, Tesla, and a variety of different things. So definitely go and listen to that. But yeah, in terms of a marketing takeaway, the way you communicate what your product and your brand is all about can completely change the way people think about your product or service in a positive or negative way. So it's so important to get the way that you position your products and services to your audience right.
Yeah.
And then I'll give a brief example from last week's episode, the Eurostar thing. So Eurostar in 2003 invested millions in decreasing the time to get from London to Paris by 20 minutes. Rory Sutherland said that they could have achieved the exact same result by reframing the situation. Rather than decreasing the quantity of the time on the train, increasing the quality of the time on the train by installing entertainment systems and Wi-Fi and that kind of thing. So it's two completely different ways of looking at a situation and framing a situation to get the same end result.
I think one thing similar to this is a simple thing that we changed years ago of like when we're quoting for some work, it used to, I don't know what we used to put, like costs or something.
Yes.
And we changed it to investment fee.
Yes.
Costs just feel like something I've got to spend money and I'm losing it. Whereas we call it investment fees because everything we do should have a return on investment.
Yes.
So you invest £20,000 and then at the end of the campaign you're like, oh, I've made £80,000.
Yeah.
And framing that as an investment, so and in your mind I'm going to get stuff back rather than a cost, which is more in your mind of I just give that money away and that's gone.
Yep. Another example that I learnt this from Dad years ago. He said to us, or said to me, to never call it a proposal and call it an action plan. A proposal, which is what everyone calls the kind of a quote basically, where someone says, I'm interested in these services, and you give them a quote documented. A proposal sounds like you're proposing to do something for them for a cost. Whereas an action plan is more like, together we're going to figure out a plan of action to help you achieve what you want to achieve. And it's just subtle ways of reframing.
It's interesting as well. I think this framing happens a lot with pricing. So I've never seen Netflix say Netflix £80 a year.
No,
because £80 seems like a big purchase, but they'll always say like $7.99 a month because in your head then you just think that's only £8.
Yeah, but
obviously it's I was going to say it's the same, but that maths doesn't work out. It's only 10 months in a year. You know what I mean? And a lot of companies do this with their pricing, frame it slightly differently. Or there's that, I mean, maybe you're going to talk about this, but there's the whole thing where like if you have a cheap an expensive and an option in the middle, more people go for the middle one, whereas if you didn't have the expensive one, they go for the cheap. You know, the way you frame pricing has an effect as well.
There's another one of my favorite examples from Apple. So in 2003, they invented the world's first portable digital media player, which they called the
iPod.
Yes. So in 2003, they brought out the iPod, and it was a completely new invention. No one before we had, like, remember cassette players, portable CD players?
Yeah, the
mini disc
Sony Discman.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they invented the world's first portable digital media player. Now, I don't know about you, but if I had invented that, I'd probably want to be shouting it from the rooftops and telling everyone this new invention that we created, right? But when Steve Jobs, you know, like they do, like Microsoft, they do these events where they get on stage and they present the product.
Yeah.
So rather than getting on stage in 2003 and saying, here's the world's first portable digital media player, he stood on stage, pulled it out of his pocket and said, 1,000 songs in your pocket. And what he did there that was super clever was he reframed that situation from this is what our product is to this is what our product does for you.
Yeah.
And like I think like in marketing, and I have to keep reminding myself this is ensuring that with all of our messaging, we're thinking like, how can we reframe this so it's talking to our ideal customers and something that means something to them rather than just what we want to say to them. And you've sometimes given me feedback of saying like, that's kind of jargon that we use internally, Dan. Yeah. No one's going to get that. And it's important to really reframe situations.
For those that are too young as well, so 1,000 songs in your pocket, at the time when Steve Jobs was saying that, so firstly, you had these little CD players. They didn't even fit in your pocket. You had to have some of them had clips that like went on your belt.
Oh God! I guarantee you were the kind of kid that had the clip on the belt.
Might have done. And like, so an album would have maximum 20 songs on. So it was that is such a big. You're thinking 20 songs that I can't even fit in my pocket. Yeah, goes on my belt.
An MP3 player. God, I remember those.
Yeah, oh, the good old days.
Yeah.
Yeah, the world's changed now.
So yeah, reframing is a really clever way of improving your marketing, speaking to your ideal customers.
Nice. Dan, can I hear about another?
You can hear about another one, Lloyd. As you asked, here's another one.
Okay.
So have you heard of mere exposure theory, Lloyd?
No, I haven't at all.
So what this is all about is it says that the more we're exposed to something, the more we like it.
Okay.
So there's research from another person with an interesting name, Robert Sejunk.
I feel like someone's pranking you with these names.
Robert Sejunk showed Chinese characters to non-Chinese speaking participants. He showed each character 1 to 25 times, asking participants to guess the meaning of the character. The more often a participant saw a character, the more positive meaning they gave. The theory has a quick effect too. Researchers Kunst and Williams showed their study participants a picture of an octagon for only 1 millisecond. Later on, though, the participants could not explicitly remember seeing an octagon, but they showed an increased affinity for the shape. But how mental is that? 1 millisecond, they flashed an octagon and they felt more an affinity to the product.
I like how you say octagon.
Octagon. How do you say it?
I'm not sure really. Octagon.
Okay.
So the more you're exposed to something, the more you like it.
Yes.
Okay.
And in terms of marketing, and this is something we do a lot of, is and I feel like we're quite good at is ensuring we're getting in front of our customers and our ideal customers regularly, and hitting that same message home regularly on different platforms. You know the whole it takes 8 marketing touch points or whatever that stat is to convince someone to become a customer.
I suppose it makes sense of like there's that human thing of you seek comfort and you seek like people and things that you trust, and you're like, oh, I've experienced that before, and so I know what that is. Like naturally, most people are like new and different things. They're kind of like, oh god. So if you're in front of them more and more times, they're like, oh, I know who that is. I like it when they say stuff, and I'm going to watch this video.
This is the power of providing value up front, of like leading with value. I obviously manage and deliver most of our kind of sales calls and pitches and that kind of thing. What I notice a huge amount of is decision makers coming onto that pitch and talking to me like they know us. Referencing podcast episode, referencing, oh my god, did Lloyd do this thing? Oh my god, I saw your team doing a shoot on the beach with Lloyd just as a shark, or with this or that. It's not all referencing Lloyd, but this is the power of providing value up front and creating content on a regular basis. People feel like they know you. Our customers pre-qualify themselves before working with us. They come to us knowing they want to work with us, and we just have to help them figure out how, because we're providing value up front and they feel like they know us. Nice.
I haven't heard of that one before.
Yeah. I mean, I've got various other studies. I don't know how many more you want to go through. Is there any?
Oh, you have got a lot. I think perhaps, Dan, mate, should we do one more and then save the rest for another episode?
Yeah.
Pick your favourite, Dan. You've done a lot of preparation for this.
Okay.
One. Maybe one with names you can read or something like that. Anything.
Okay, let me decide. This is a cool one.
Okay.
Have you heard of the Ikea Effect?
I don't think so.
This is interesting.
I've heard of Ikea, obviously.
Yeah. So, consumers place a disproportionately high value on products they partially created. So, so let me give you an example.
Yeah.
IKEA. So, if you go to IKEA, buy a flat pack piece of furniture, go home, spend, I don't know how long, an hour, 2 hours building your flat pack piece of furniture.
20 minutes, mate.
20 minutes for you.
Yeah.
And by the end of that situation, compare having the one that you've made to just buying one online and it's pre-made. You consider the one that you've made more valuable than the one that...
Right. So therefore you'd probably be willing to pay more for something that you're making yourself. So you're willing to pay more and they don't have to make it.
And in terms of the marketing takeaway here, getting your customers involved in giving feedback for your products and suggest your features that you want on our software, or something quite clever we did when we were moved offices. I don't know if you remember this, Lloyd. We, without knowing it, I didn't know this study before, but we were getting feedback on like the furniture we should be getting, the color schemes, the designs of stuff. We were posting it online and getting people to vote and things to feel like they were part of this. So we've got an ecosystem of people who feel part of Knowlton, and they're kind of bought into what we're doing.
Yeah. I'm also just thinking with our customers, when we have a customer that, and they have representatives that come onto the shoot, and sometimes they have kind of cameo roles in the videos and stuff, and they're like part of the process. I do feel that they are the ones that always seem the happiest, like they're involved, and it does have a disproportionate positive effect.
Yeah.
Interesting.
It's like, learned this from that How to Win Friends and Influence People book.
Yeah.
People love speaking about themselves. Sometimes when you meet someone and they speak a lot at you sometimes.
Reminds me a bit of this podcast
episode.
Well,
no, but So when people speak at you a lot, sometimes they'll say, that was a great conversation. I loved that, because they felt like they spoke about themselves more.
Right.
So in that
have you enjoyed this episode?
I've spoken about some interesting studies, Lloyd.
You have. You really have. I'm just wondering if you've enjoyed it.
Yeah, I've enjoyed it.
Yeah, good.
So the lesson from that book is like, ask more questions.
Yeah.
How are you, Lloyd?
If the other person's involved in the conversation, well, they're going to enjoy it more.
Bought in.
Yeah. Okay.
So I won't go through any more because you're clearly bored of my studies, Lloyd.
I'm not bored. I really like them, but I'm thinking if this goes down well, we could do another episode. Maybe I'll get involved. Well,
the next episode you're very involved in it. Next week's episode
I am, aren't I? So if you're a Lloyd fan,
anyone out there? Anyone?
3 of you out there. We're going to be talking about recession proofing next week, aren't we? Oh, I can feel the excitement building. So
we look forward to
seeing you in your ears
next week.